Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today let's make a diagonal fan-fold sweatshirt. The sweatshirt that I'm using is a Reebok brand, which I purchased on clearance. It is kind of a beige color and it's 80% cotton and 20% polyester. I did a hoodie in this brand and the polyester was part of the thread and it was the inside, the fuzzy part of the hoodie. So I suspect this one's probably going to dye about the same way, and the hoodie dyed up really well. I'm going to start by grabbing one corner of the sweatshirt and folding it up past the opposite shoulder of the sweatshirt. Then using a washable marker and an old piece of sinew, I'm going to draw an arc onto the sweatshirt. I'm going to use the line that I just drew onto the sweatshirt as my guide for making fan folds. Once I have this line fan folded, I'm going to hold the folds in place with some kite string. I'm also going to continue the fan folds on either side of this initial line. Once I have the sweatshirt tied up, I'm going to go ahead and put it aside for a couple of days and let it dry out just a little bit. Because the fabric is pretty thick, I think I'll probably get better color saturation if it's pretty dry when I apply the dye. If you'd like a little more information about this topic, I have a blog post out on my website talking about applying the dye to dry items versus to damp items. And I have a link to my website down below this video in the description. Okay, so for my setup, I have the sweatshirt on top of a metal rack, and I have the metal rack over the top of a plastic tote. Then I'm using my silicone cake molds by attaching them together, and then I'm going to place them around the sweatshirt and hold them up close to the sweatshirt by attaching some wooden clothespins to the metal rack. This is going to make an ice barrier to keep the ice on the sweatshirt. Then because the sweatshirt is completely dry, I'm going to lightly spray the top with a little bit of soda ash solution that I've placed inside of a spray bottle. That will help the dye to stick to the top of the sweatshirt a little bit better. Then before I begin applying the dye, I'm going to use 4 different dye colors. So I'm going to use a washable marker and make myself some lines on the sweatshirt where I want to apply the dye. Not too long ago, I made a flour sack towel and I used some root beer float from Dalula Company paired with the wild plum from Dalula Company. And I really loved that color combination. So I decided to use those 2 colors on this sweatshirt and then pair them with a couple other Dharma colors. I'm going to use olive drab and black cherry as the other Dharma colors. So I'm starting by applying the root beer float to 2 of the sections and leaving enough space for the other 3 colors. Then I'm going to use wild plum, followed by olive drab and black cherry. Now I'm going to add a little bit of additional dry soda ash over the top of the dye and add on some ice. I add the additional dry soda ash just because I'm going to add quite a bit of ice on top of this sweatshirt. And I want to make sure as I'm forcing that liquid down through the sweatshirt that I don't accidentally rinse out all of the initial soda ash I have in the sweatshirt from my soda ash soak. I'm using fiber reactive dye, and the fiber reactive dye needs the soda ash to raise the pH and properly bond the dye to the fabric. Once I have a pretty thick layer of ice on top of the sweatshirt, I'm going to take one end of this metal rack and place it down inside of the plastic tote. I'm going to leave the other end of the rack hanging over the edge of the tote, which is going to incline this sweatshirt. Then I'm going to place the sweatshirt aside and allow the ice to melt. And after the first layer of ice melted, I came back and had just a little bit of undissolved dye left sitting on top, so I went ahead and added a second layer of ice. After that second layer of ice melted, I went ahead and left the sweatshirt alone and allowed it to process for about 48 hours before I began rinsing it. To rinse the sweatshirt, I took it to my utility sink and I began rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. Then I warmed the water up to hot, untied the sweatshirt, and continued rinsing in hot water to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Instead of continuing to rinse for a long time, I went ahead and ran some really hot water in my utility sink, added a little bit of Blue Dawn dish soap to the water, placed the sweatshirt inside, and allowed it to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out, and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. It took a while because this thicker fabric really does hold quite a bit of dye. But once my water was remaining almost clear, I took the sweatshirt, placed it inside of my washing machine, and I washed it on a hot water cycle along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent. Okay, so the sweatshirt's been washed, dried, and ironed, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? So I think this one turned out really cool. You know, I already like the Dalula Company Wild Plum and Root Beer Float combination. And then I think adding in the black cherry and the olive just really kind of sets it off. I think that olive brings just a different pop of color, which is cool in the middle of this sweatshirt. I also like the dye movement. I really like this design because the dye just kind of flows in toward the middle. And I think that is very interesting to look at. I also like these colors together. I like the green paired with the dark burgundy, and then the root beer float just adds in that lighter shade, which kind of makes it all work together. This sweatshirt also had a graphic on the front, and I didn't really take the graphic into account, meaning I didn't care if it got messed up. I didn't care if it stayed white. I really just was kind of ignoring the graphic. But for the most part, it stayed white and it stayed in good shape. Like I said, I bought this sweatshirt on clearance, so I just thought I would try it. I thought with an 80% cotton fabric content, it would probably dye up really well, and I think it did. Of course, the inside of the hoodie had a lot of polyester, so, you know, that part is not really pretty, but you're never going to wear it that way. And honestly, I don't know about the thread because the stitch is very small. It's not totally colored, but it's also not totally uncolored. So I don't know if they could have partial cotton and partial polyester thread. I am not a seamstress, so I don't really purchase a lot of thread. But if the thread is still white, it's not super noticeable. So overall, I really love this hoodie. I love the color combination. I love the design. But what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.